Danley, this week we have got... Was that so natural and conversational?
That was great.
Thank you. We've got one of the coolest guys.
Yes.
I think just dudes that I think we've interviewed. And he was a
Shoopaloop.
Yeah, the great Grubes.
Great Shoopy.
Who has an incredible story that he's going to share with us about how he worked his career up from being an unpaid intern of Norm Hitzges, fetching olives and goat cheese, to now working as the in-house DJ for the Stars and the Texas Rangers, and just how that career path has been shaped and molded. We sort of compared him a little bit to David Baker, and that Baker said he's kind of like failed upwards.
Yeah.
That as each new thing, as he got tired of it, somebody was like, no, here's this other cool thing that I'd like for you to do because you seem like an awesome cat.
Yeah, I think this episode will be a big favorite of our fans, especially any P1s.
Yeah, if you love
any P1s,
America's favorite radio station, Sports Radio 1310,
you're going to like this episode,
which
for those who do not live in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and do not know what a P1 is, there's a little station called The Ticket. Do sports radio, and they are pretty good. They're pretty good at it. They won how many of the awards did they win?
They've won 3 Marconis.
One of those, one was the Musers, right, which is the morning show.
Morning show, yeah.
One was the Hardline.
No, the other 2 were for
producing
America's favorite radio station.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why they have the moniker America's favorite radio station, 96.7 and 1310.
It's a legendary station. Michael Gruber having multiple hats.
Yeah,
over the years,
and really he was, and we talk about all of this stuff in the interview. He was a driving force to bring, not only to pave the way for some of the guys our age that are on there right now, but he was the guy that led us into this club that was The Ticket. There was nobody our age that was in the club. Everybody that was part of the club
was all a bunch of old farts.
Yeah, it was our dad's age and older, and they were great at what they did, but there was no way that you could break into the on-air talent as far as what they were doing.
Until he did.
Yeah, and until he did, and he did it by being himself, by being authentic, by
working for free,
and
by being a slave,
by being the funny irritant, which is, I think, what the role of
it was so much
that
fun.
we play in our real lives, in our families, and definitely me in the church. I think it's awesome, and can't thank Grubes enough for coming on. We really hope that you guys enjoy the interview. Definitely, if you're a P1, tuned. Check it out. And without further ado,
Gruber. McGruber. Different guy. I'm sorry about that. Cue the video.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Reverend and the Reprobate, as we get to interview one of my absolute role models in radio and in sound. It is the man I always wish I was in high school and college, the one who was living the dream before the dream. It is Michael Grubes Shoopy Gruber. How's it going?
Hey, I'm good. Good to be with y'all.
So
yeah, thanks for being here.
You've got one of the most incredible career paths of anyone I've ever followed, and I want to start before we hop too far down that road. We're roughly the same age. We're guys in our mid-30s. I remember that growing up, when we first heard you on The Ticket, you were kind of the envy and the talk of all of the guys in my high school and college locker rooms, because it was this idea that, like, one of us, that a guy that was not a radio guy, that just a dude who loved The Ticket and loved sports, had made it into that arena. And a few weeks ago, we did an interview with David Baker, who's on Forged in Fire on the History Channel, and he talked about how his career kind of failed upwards. And reading some of the articles and things on you, I think that there's a lot of ways that yours mirrors that, in the way that, like, you started off as just a dude and then ended up now working with the Stars, and now
maybe it's more like chilled upwards.
Yeah, chilled upwards. That's exactly right. And now it seems like you've got kind of your dream gig with working for the Texas Rangers, which has always been your passion. So can you talk to us about the Michael Gruber career path and how you got to where you are?
Oh, God. I can try.
There we go.
So it's just kind of like you said, I started so early, and I didn't have any grand aspirations, really. I just, at the time, I was in high school and trying to play baseball. My hope was to be the next Pudge Rodriguez for the Rangers.
Yeah.
And I realized pretty much about sophomore, early junior year that wasn't going to be happening. I still stayed involved with the team. I got to be like team manager, or student manager, something like that. And stuck around because I love baseball, but I'd been listening to the ticket pretty heavily since freshman year, and I'd been aware of the ticket since it came on board in like third grade for me in 1994.
Right.
My dad was a day one listener. He claims that he was like the third caller on the air with Skip Bayless.
Oh, that's horrible. I mean, good for your dad, but horrible that he was on with Skip.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they had in the mornings at the time. And, so I was aware of the ticket and just started listening more and more. And I just basically became obsessed with the ticket. And I, fortunately, as part of my connections with baseball, one of my coaches at Jesuit, Danny Lowry, was a sales guy at the ticket. If you remember the Charity Challenge hockey games back in the day.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like Danny Lowry dominated. Like at least one of them, he had a hat trick, but he was always like one of the best, if not the best player on the ice. So he was a sales guy, but he got along really well with all, the ticket hosts and, people on production side of things. And so near the end of my junior year, I asked Danny if it would be possible to get some sort of work at the ticket. I knew that baseball was not going to be the career path, I guess, somewhat ironically. And
yeah, you were wrong about that.
Yeah,
I turned out to be, which I'm often wrong. So I just kind of figured, well, I don't necessarily have to get paid yet because I'm still living with my parents. Thankfully they have the means to, not need me to be working to provide, money back to them. So I was like, well, maybe I can find something at the ticket. And a few weeks later, got an email from Danny saying, Norm Hitzkes is happy to have an intern. We'll see you Monday, July 3rd. This is 2002, June 3rd at 8:30 a.m. or whatever time. And it just kind of went from there.
That's so awesome.
It's so weird. And, for me, I never had the super high aspirations of being a host. I think y'all I'm assuming you both listen.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I forced Danley into his P1.
I was gonna say that mine started after you did because you had been listening to it.
I was a day one. I was so happy.
Yeah, for you it was day one because you were born and then you were listening to it.
Yeah, well, my dad used to listen to Randy Galloway all the time, and whenever he would pick us up from school, that's who he had on was Randy Galloway. And my mom worked nights and my dad worked during the day, and so they would swap. Like mom would drop us off at dad's work. He worked for Southwestern Bell at the time. She would drop us off at his work, and then he would take us home, and he would listen to Randy Galloway. And I was so relieved the very first day that Galloway wasn't on the radio because it was day one of the ticket.
Oh, yes. Your dad's a day one.
Well, that's why I fell in love
P1.
with the ticket is because I hated Randy Galloway as a child.
Yeah, mine. I was driving a lot for work. I just started a job, and I had listened to music enough on the radio. It was the 97.1 The Eagle, which, greatness, mandatory Metallica all the way. But there's only so much music you can listen to in a day, and he had mentioned the ticket a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And I just went, I personally am not a super sports guy, but I came for the sports and stayed for the comedy because of how funny it was.
Yeah.
So I actually learned a lot about sports, because
you
not
were
being a real big sports guy.
Yeah, you did not care at all about sports whenever we were originally playing together. So we totally interrupted you, and you're our guest. So you started with the ticket. You got this job working for Norm, I guess, getting him olives and goat cheese. What did working for Norm as an intern, what did that entail and what did that look like? Because the guys joke a lot about Norm and like his Donovan calls it like his depression eating habits because of, how old he is and those kind of things. But what was it like working for Norm? Because Norm is, of all of the guys now that Mike has retired, is the sort of consummate professional and the statesman of the ticket, and gives him a lot of sports credibility in that essence. What was it like working with Norm?
I had a great time working with him. We got along. I think just I can't claim that I was just this huge super sports fan. I was kind of along the lines of y'all maybe, where I listened to the ticket for the comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I love baseball, but I wasn't huge into the other sports. But Norm, I think, could tell that I wanted to be there, that I had the drive to do something at the ticket, even if I knew that being a host was not my calling. Like when I started listening and figured out what the board operator was and what they did, playing drops and all that, I thought that's got to be the greatest job ever. And so that's kind of what I came into the ticket of wanting to do, was to be a board operator. And so that's what I kind of always had in mind. But like when I was interning with Norm, I was learning how to produce. I produced quite a bit, filling in like, the Normathons. I would always be the producer back at the studio for like all 24, 26 hours.
Good
and
grief.
and filling in. I filled in as producer for Bob and Dan, the Hardline, Norm, of course. And so that was a path that was also kind of being not pushed on me, but that kind of made the most sense at the time, because honestly, being 16 and then 17 into my, early on in my time interning, I literally couldn't get on the board till I was 18. That's, legalities and
Right.
all that. And so it was a way to help keep me around and all that. But, working with Norm, he really was, especially at that time, like he's now kind of learned how to use the internet well enough.
Right.
He's always on his email now, and it's amazing to see that, because he did not understand the internet at the time. He was just like, I need to find this statistic, and it would be very vague, and I'd be like, well, I think I can maybe find that on MLB.com or something. Obviously the statistics weren't as robust and easy to find online back in 2002, but he was always gracious. He was always finding ways to get me involved and to, teach me any little things that he could. And honestly, just the pure joy that he had and still has. I think he's 74 now. And he still has that passion. He still has that drive. He still is always curious, and just, again, the graciousness that he had was a big lesson for me, because I knew who Norm was. I knew he was a big deal. I knew that, he was the sports credibility of the station when he came on. And, even then he was kind of the older statesman, even though he was in his 50s. But just seeing the way he treated everybody, and then, working with Mark Friedman, Frito, his producer for so many years, they both were just so gracious and kind to give me all these opportunities that, the things I was getting to do before I even turned 18 was just awesome. I was essentially the second producer, along with Frito, working, the NBA draft and NFL draft and all that. And so
that's awesome.
It was amazing. And then as I started running the board is when I started kind of progressing more in that realm. But yeah, Norm was just, and still is, a great friend. I still check in with him and email him about once a week at least, and try to just, keep the positive vibes going for him. And, he's still, listening to him, even even though, the struggles that he's going through with the bladder cancer, like had so many issues with his back, with everything. And he still has that energy and charisma, and just excitement to still be doing radio and getting to talk about sports for a living.
Yeah,
Which is awesome.
he's always been hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Some of it's, I think, very intentional. Some of it is the drops, like you mentioned. So I wanted to ask about some of the drops. I can think of several off the top of my head. I won't do them. But what were your favorite ones? What were ones that you kind of had? I'm guessing you had some of your quick saves, or quick hotkeys or whatever. What were some of your top 3 favorite drops?
Well, the great thing about Norm is he said so many things, and they're all so clean that I could essentially build half of a co-host with just Norm drops and using those for calling and responding. And so whether it's hanging up angrily on a phone call, I'm sorry, that's it, or
that's it.
Yeah, just that, or
I love Norm.
Oh, he's the best, and I love you, and all these just different reactions.
Are you gay?
Yeah, every single thing, and it's funny, talking with Big Strong Jeremy, the morning show, and Norm's board op for 20 years now. We figured out at one point that this was, say, maybe in like 2010. Norm had been with the station about 10 years. The station had been on the air for about 16. Despite Norm only being a 2-hour show and being there for essentially half the time as, Mike and Greg and George and Craig and Gordon, he still had more drops than any of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
And part of it's because, he's essentially his own host. Like, he would pop on, Frito or the crew, but he hardly ever had any music running in the background. So that didn't run the risk of, like, everything he said was clean.
Mm-hmm. It was up for grabs, all of it.
Yeah, it was so easy to cut into a drop. And again, going back to how gracious Norm is, despite some of the things I edited together, and
the questions on why today doesn't suck were some of the best ones.
Yeah,
that really helped kind of make my mark with being a board operator. Was I got lucky where I got to take over the board for Bad Radio at 19, and so I was working that every day, and I also wound up getting to run Why Today Doesn't Suck, because the guy that was coming in after me, Justin Neely, was going to college to finish out his degree. So I took over from him a couple years after that, but because of all that, getting to run Why Today Doesn't Suck really helped kind of keep me in the loop with working drops for Mike and Grego for the hard line, and playing the Norm, the hey Mike, hey Grego, you know, and like
guess what I have in my underwear and all of that stuff. Yeah.
So just being able to use Norm as kind of the springboard, both as a way to stick around as an intern, but then to also kind of make a mark as a board op. Like, he's always been nothing but gracious. There have been a couple times where he said something on the air and, after a segment asked, please don't mark that. I was like, that's totally fair. I'm not going to, like, my goal isn't to make him look bad. It's to be entertaining. And thankfully Norm knew that. And like I said, even though, I haven't worked by Norm or with Norm in 8 years, since I've left the ticket, I've still gotten to hang out with him. I'm still friends with him. Gotten to go on a couple of those guys trips, as he calls them, to see games and other cities and all that. And so, just the graciousness of Norm is just amazing.
So how did the shift happen? We talk about your time on the ticket, and you were, you said you took over as a board up at 19. You were kind of all of the local teenagers and guys in their young 20s. You were sort of our hero because of that. It felt like we had a connection to these guys that we really wanted to be friends with. And I think all of us wanted to be Grubes.
I want to play It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia drops. And
yeah, that's it.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, because we knew that we didn't have necessarily a spot at the table with those guys, but we could all see ourselves irritating those guys and trying to make them laugh. And so it felt like there was this kind of connection with somebody again that was on the station, and similar to the way that my dad felt about the hosts. I felt about you and a lot of the guys that I was hanging out with and playing sports with. We all felt the same way. Like Grubes was our hero whenever we were growing up. And then all of a sudden,
do you have a cape with the G on it?
You should.
No, but it is funny. Like I definitely knew that and felt that. Kind of bringing in that younger generation of ticket listeners. Not to try to overstate my role in things,
sure,
but I was the first. Like, I feel like P1 that could relate to the younger people. Like, Corby was technically a P1, but he started within the first year of the station. Danny Bayless was, Danny in Lake Highlands singing songs and all that, but he was still in the host age range.
Yeah.
I was the youngest by far for a long time, and being so online, like I was all jumping onto, various ticket related forums and just, talking about how great the ticket was. Like, I was clearly a P1. You could hear, throughout the shows that I was working, that I enjoyed so much of what I did, hearing my stupid laugh in the background through the producer's microphone and all that, that I think it did kind of help, I don't know, bring about a little bit more of a personal connection, even if we haven't technically met yet,
Right.
like,
Mm-hmm.
I still tried to connect with people because it wasn't some like, oh, I need my ego fed. It's just, talk about it with other people that love it too. And then, that helped get people emailing me saying, hey, I don't know if you heard, but Norm said this at this time, or,
right.
There was a funny drop from Junior, or someone on the weekend had an e-break or whatever. And so just kind of helping build this connection that thankfully I'm still kind of able to keep with since I've left, the Stars fans and Rangers fans and Rough Riders fans and all that, that I'm a fan of all of these teams and the radio station and all that. And so I kind of have gotten to be that lucky fan that gets to, be on the other side of it. And I never take that for granted. And, I try not to overstate anything that I do ever, but I do feel that having that connection so early on has absolutely helped me with everything I've gotten to do since.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'm so glad for you to getting to start at the ticket. Like, we've said it 100 times already that we would love to have been involved or to be involved at some point, but then transitioning to being the musical director for the Stars and now working with the Rangers, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a great thing to have you there on the ticket, and you ushered in, I think, some of the younger guys, kind of paved the way for guys with different ambitions, like Jake, who started off as board op and then producer, and now is on with Dan as part of, I guess, the new Bad Radio. And I remember distinctly all of the changes that happened at the ticket, when Frito left. I remember the stuff with Grego and all the mystery that was around all of that, and how much was and wasn't shared, and the rumors and things that were coming out. And then I remember turning on the radio one day and Grubes was gone. And just like with most of the other disappearances, as a way to put it, with the ticket, the guys really didn't say much about it. It was almost as jarring to me as the Grego stuff, or when like Bassick just disappeared one day and everybody pretended like he never was there. But your disappearance was different because it was, you were gone to pursue other things, but your drops and legacy, lived on through the Barbaro sketch and some other things for our listeners who are familiar with that. So what happened when you left the ticket? What led up and what was behind the motivation behind your leaving?
Well, first of all, I never wanted to leave, and I've tried to make that kind of clear when that is brought up. It's
Right.
There's no bitterness. There's no
There's no animosity
anything
there.
like that. It's just being a board operator for a radio station, unfortunately, just doesn't pay. And, the main job of a board operator is to play the commercials, make sure the station stays on air, and that it sounds right. So the drops are just kind of an extra thing, even though they're such a big part of the ticket. And so making $25,000 a year at 21 was awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah. You're rich.
I can get Wendy's.
It was great. But then 5 years later, just kind of realizing, okay, it's getting tougher and tougher to make rent every month. Just not able to, I'm just not making any money, relatively.
Yeah.
And there are also some things where just the way for me, the big thing that really pushed me was the move to the new studios. That happened in January of 2012. And for me, it kind of became, okay, I'm not getting paid. And now my job is now 100 times harder because everything is just not compatible. We lost half of our drop library, and we're essentially kind of told to deal with it, which I understand to a point that, hey, if you're a professional, you work with whatever you got. But when it all just kind of came crumbling down in that way, I realized that, all right, maybe now is the time to see what else is out there. And, my attempt was to go back and finish my degree because I dropped out of SMU after becoming full-time at 21. But, I was like, well, I got about 50 hours so I can finish up at UNT. And, the problem is I've never been a good student. That's, and so, I realized pretty quickly that was kind of going to flame out. And so I got lucky where, I knew some people over at Fox Southwest. Ron Pell was the full-time audio guy at the time there, and he was able to kind of get me training over there. But, from there, the Stars kind of gone through a couple DJs. After Jeff Kay had kind of slid over to doing the PA, he was the music director for the Stars for 4 years before taking over the PA. And thankfully, because of my time at the ticket, I knew quite a few people over with the Stars, Ralph Strangis, Jeff Kay. Jeff and I had known each other since I started at the ticket because he was just across the hall at 93.3 The Bone, if you remember that
You guys were like sister stations.
Yeah. Literally, right next to each other. And so when I left and, things didn't work out with the second DJ that had taken over was DJ Wiz T. He was the Mavericks DJ for 7 years. And so for a season, they had Wiz doing Mavs and Stars, but he was also teaching full-time, and he realized that he couldn't keep up that schedule. So I got the opportunity, I got a call, and I know there were a couple other people that they were looking at, but they seemed to be focused mostly on me, thankfully.
Thankfully for us as fans, too.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to, I made it 7 seasons now, and because I actually, about a month into that first season, I was so lacking confidence in what I was doing that I actually wrote out and emailed a resignation letter to my direct boss, the director of game presentation. He was like, look, I know it's a lot, you're taking on a lot, but we think you can do this. Just give it the rest of the season. We're not going to fire you. We're not going to, we're going to do what we can to help you. But, it was essentially, we're not accepting your resignation.
Good.
That's a pretty amazing vote of confidence. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Good. So what did you So if we fast forward after a month, where you've decided to resign because it's not going well, and then you get your feet under you. What was a different approach that you took from DJ Wiz T? Did I get that right? So what did you change? Because I notice the last several years going, I don't think I remember having a conversation with my wife going home from some Stars games going, like, it felt much different to me. There was a lot of, I laughed at some of the things that came up that I had heard. What approach did you take to that? I'll just say it that way.
Well, it was a combination of me and then the director of game presentation that I mentioned. He'd only taken over the season before, but he'd been with the Stars for about 8 years. Jason Danby, he has a very non-traditional mindset, and he pretty much had already gone through and determined all the different things in the arena that he felt didn't really get a reaction for the crowd, or that could be done a little bit better or whatever. And he felt like the music could use some freshening up. It's just, the Stars have and had a long tradition of always being pretty much near the top of the league for best music and game presentation.
Yeah.
But, everything's got a cycle. Everything, needs a freshening up. And, with Danby, he pretty much took it as a chance to say, well, let's just do everything different. Like, do we have to hear Welcome to the Jungle every other game or every game? And, what can we find that maybe has a similar feel, but just isn't a staple necessarily? And we, eventually we kind of started folding in the traditional songs again and all that. But, that also kind of helped me it's like, look, you're not doing DJ Wiz T show. You're not doing DJ EJ show. You're not doing Jeff K's show. You're not doing Ty Wupker's show. You kind of have some freedom to do things differently, to look at it a different way. And, he's also a musician. He's a drummer. He plays guitar. So he actually wound up playing my Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I wanted to ask about that too.
Yeah, I think we'll get to Pepper Theft here shortly, but yeah.
But both of us being somewhat musically minded, I'm never going to claim I'm a great guitar player. I never could after that Under the Bridge performance. but at least understanding and just, I love music, even if I don't fully understand it. And, being able to talk with him about, what if we on a review played Only Time by Enya? Or, just stuff that...
Yes, I think that was one of the times I laughed. I was like, what the heck?
Or randomly play Smash Mouth.
Yeah.
Like I wonder, and we've talked about this, how many things do you do during a Stars game to sort of like poke the crowd with a sharp stick, where you're just like trying to see, like, all right, can I get a reaction out of the fans that are here versus like, is this the right song to play, or
getting either a laugh or anger?
Yeah. Can I get a laugh or a groan if I play the right thing here?
Yeah, I'd say the first couple of years we definitely tried doing that a bit more often, of trying to kind of poke the crowd, but then it kind of became that was such a part of our reputation that we were able to kind of ride that and do like the one big thing each year, whether it's playing Smash Mouth for a whole period or Nickelback for a whole period, or, doing a joke about our attendance being 1.5 million 4 years ago. Just, but it's like we kind of realized, okay, if we go viral once a year, we've done our job of keeping ourselves kind of in that national conversation, but we can still be entertaining game to game, but we don't need to do that all the time because it can be too much.
Right.
And you don't want to take away from, the product on the ice ultimately, and you want to make sure that it's still a fun experience. And so it became more, again, because of my stupid Twitter following, and whatever you
The
want to call
the
it,
P1 Hornet's Nest.
that too. And, where people are able to tweet me with a song they want to hear. And it's like, if it's good, I can play it. And all of a sudden I get that little, section of Twitter buzzing like, oh my God, Grubes played this song. And then, for other people, it's, maybe the Stars lost, but they can still go home saying, hey, they had a funny bit on the scoreboard, or Grubes played a song I like, or Selena Ray, had some sarcastic comment when she was, doing one of the games, intermission games, that we always tried to find a way to have each game have its own feel and not just being like, okay, well, this is our format. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get to Ranger talk, and
Yeah, I was
then
gonna
let's
say.
fast forward so that I can
Yeah.
talk about Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, we want to talk about some pepper theft. So you left the ticket whenever they moved into the new studio. The head engineer, as he has been referred to by the people on the morning show, has over the last several years been the ire of several of those folks. So, but you left the ticket when you went into a new stadium per se, and when the Rangers move into their new stadium, now you are moving into the seat that has been occupied by the legend of the ballpark in Arlington, Chuck Morgan. And what has that been like, and specifically in this year, which has been so bizarre?
Yeah, it's surreal. Like, in the intro, you joked about the dream before the dream. The Rangers was kind of the dream before the ticket dream. I've been a Rangers fan all my life, and Chuck has been working, the PA and the music and the mixer and the time and the scoreboard and everything for my whole life plus a couple years. The dude has been there for forever, but I kind of like drops always spoke to me when I was listening to the ticket. The music and Chuck's voice always spoke to me when I was at Rangers games. When Chuck's announcing Juan Gonzalez and playing
Yes,
the
yeah.
Imperial Death March, and when Pudge Rodriguez would throw out a runner, he'd play another one, Bites the Dust, and all these things that were just always kind of in the back of my head. Chuck has just been such a hero, and I've kind of said like he and Mike Reiner are the cause of about 90% of the happiness for Dallas sports fans. I'd
Oh
say,
yeah.
For the last 25 to 35 years. And yeah, man, it like, because of my time at the ticket, Chuck's a big P1. He's been a day one listener. And, he always enjoyed the job that I did playing drops. He knew that I was a Rangers fan. And, we've known each other and been friends for about 15 years. Not super close best friends, but, we always enjoy getting to talk to each other and hang out and catch up whenever we can. And so I'd known actually since pretty early into my time of starting with the Stars, 7 years ago, pretty early on into my time with them, Chuck kind of sent me a message asking if I had any video experience, and he kind of interested in seeing if I could do that. I was like, well, I don't really have that. Like, I'm good with playing audio, but I don't have that that experience that he was, looking for when he was needing to hire some video people. But then he said, well, maybe we can in the meantime come up with a bit of a gentleman's agreement that, somewhere along the line I'm going to be looking to kind of scale back some of my work, and maybe we can, find a spot for you playing music at the Rangers games. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I cried when I saw that email.
No kidding.
And so I've known the possibility has been there for a while, but there were times where it felt like it might not happen, or it kind of just there wasn't any timeline. But then obviously moving to the new park, it represented a chance to for Chuck to make a clean break, to close out the same ballpark that he got to open, which is
Kittens.
and so I trained on 8 games with him last year at the old ballpark, which that's still weird to say.
It is. Yeah, because it was built in our lifetimes.
Right. It was the ticket is 3 months older than the temple.
Yeah.
That is so bizarre.
Yep.
Because I feel like the ticket is way older than
No.
than the
Then the old ballpark.
yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is so crazy that now it's been relegated to, well, Bob Stoops didn't even get to play there. It wasn't even the arena football.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, the XFL. I think they had a few games there, but it is pretty odd. Like I've worked now a few high school football games and some soccer games for FC Dallas's farm team, essentially, and seeing the ballpark with the astroturfed, football / soccer field where the diamond used to be is different, but getting to work those games with Chuck was kind of the chance to show that I could pick up what a Rangers game is supposed to sound like. He didn't have really any doubts, and honestly, at that point, I didn't either. I felt like I'd worked enough, games for the Stars, Mavs, Rough Riders, college football, all that, and been a Rangers fan for so long, I would be able to make it work. I didn't want to sound too confident about it, but I know in this very niche skill set, thank you, that I've got, that I knew it would be a pretty good fit. But the whole season, the pandemic with no fans in the building, and I'm having to supply the crowd noise and play the music, and
Yeah, that must be bizarre. It must
yeah.
decrease the energy that because we've talked about already of in the Stars game where you get to play and you get to feed off of the crowd. If you don't have that, how do you what?
How does that work? What do you feed off of?
Yeah, how do you know if it's coming
how do I
across?
feed?
Yeah.
I just had to create it myself. Like the first week or two of games, I probably overdid it, where I was like, well,
The crowd just loved you.
Oh, they thought every track I played was amazing. But I was playing too many cheers. I was reacting too much, and at a normal game, it would probably be pretty accurate. But when you're looking out and it's just a bunch of cardboard people and cardboard dogs, and everybody in the stadium is either in the dugout or the press box. You start to realize, okay, we can have reactions to the bigger stuff, to hits, but if there's a grounder to third that 99.9% of the time is going to be, an easy throw down to first to get the guy out, I don't really need to be reacting to that. And so thankfully, I think I did a decent enough job in those 30 games that, I never got any complaints from, either players on the field or management. So that's all I really hoped for. And overall, the people watching at home, for the most part, said it sounded like a game if they weren't thinking about, the fact that fans weren't in the building and it was just some guy triggering all, the reactions.
Yeah, my wife is a huge baseball fan. That's the one sport that she gets really into. And we had several of the Rangers games on in the background. And because the camera shots are either on the pitcher or the catcher, they're where the action's happening, it was very seldom that she would remember that there weren't fans in the stands. Which, to me was a huge testament as to what you're doing, because she's very detail oriented, as I am no longer allowed to load the dishwasher because I put the dishes in the wrong area. So it was really a cool thing to get to experience, as I'm a multitasker and doing other stuff. The game's on in the background, but for her, she was focused in on it and still didn't see much difference. When the big difference, though, that I think that this season had, that I would love to talk to you about, is when the Stars are in the Stanley Cup and you're not there, and the Rangers are not in the World Series and you are there.
Yeah.
How in the world did you juggle that? Like, where on the pendulum does that swing for you, just emotionally and professionally? Because you've done a World Series now, right?
Right.
And a World Series where some good Texas guys won.
Yeah, it'll be remembered as the one that Clayton Kershaw finally won, and it was a really fun series. It was great baseball. For me, selfishly, it was definitely weird. Like, the start of 2020 was weird with the Winter Classic, where I didn't get to work that.
Which we hated. I will tell you. So that was one of it was mentioned on the national broadcast, and I don't know if you know this. It was mentioned on the national broadcast that the Stars did not bring their production team, because the national broadcast had aired a game earlier in the year and was talking about the Stars production team. And then I took my wife's first hockey game was the Winter Classic. And she was so worried until the third period that we were going to lose her first hockey game. It was terrible. But that was a noted thing, and the people around us in our section, when things were happening that were very un-Grubes like,
when they played Welcome to the Jungle,
yeah, like when they did normal hockey stuff, we're like, this sucks.
yeah.
So it started off on a weird note for you because you didn't get to do one of the iconic things. What was the conversation behind the scenes about that?
Well, it was odd. Like, because I think we found out about a year and a half before the Winter Classic happened. That's when it was announced. And, me and Jeff K both were kind of just assuming, because all the previous Winter Classics used the home team, production crew.
Yeah.
And being 3 miles away from the American Airlines Center, in Fair Park, we kind of assumed, okay, well, we're the home team. But for whatever reason, it seemed to be decided that from now on, Winter Classics are going to be kind of treated as neutral. And
gross.
The guy, I know, right? So the guy that they used was Las Vegas's DJ or music director. He's known for being really good, and obviously he's having to be pretty neutral. I sent him a bunch of my, library, and, I made sure to mention like the Blink-182 and Garth Brooks sing-alongs, but,
there was a Garth Brooks sing-along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And an All the Small Things sing-along. And, I thought he did a good job with what he was tasked to do, which is to not make it too much like a Stars game or too much like Predators, thank you.
Yeah.
Drawing a blank.
Yeah.
Where he didn't want to make it sound too much either way, so he played it a bit more neutral, and just kind of played hockey music.
He didn't drop out whenever we all started yelling, "Who cares?" That was the first indication that something was wrong, is when the music kept going. They announce everybody, and then the music starts going immediately, and all the Stars fans are yelling, "Who cares?" And you can't hear it. We're looking at each other like, what is wrong? Is he nervous? What's wrong with Grubes? Is it something going on where he can't do this?
Somebody tweet Grubes.
Yeah, somebody do this. So that was great. So where did you end up watching the game?
I wound up just watching from home. Like, I kind of went back and forth. Like, I did at one point get a offer to like DJ from the side stage where like before the game where Jeff K and some other things were going on. And I regret now that I was kind of like, no, I was acting too diva-ish about it and all that. But it was also just kind of a weird circumstance where, Jason Danby, who'd been the director game presentation, had left the season before, the 1920 season. Or wait,
Yeah.
1990. Yeah. The season before the one that just ended.
Before the pandemic, that's all that matters.
Yeah, the pre-pandemic season.
Yes.
One of those.
And so we had a new director he'd been with the Stars for 5 years, but he just didn't really get the chance to push for us. Like, it had basically already been decided, and he was just kind of told, okay, deal with it. And thankfully he was able to, there was some, work done to get Jeff involved to do half of the Stars PA reads, which was really cool. But then it just didn't work out where, it made more sense for Las Vegas's DJ to just take the whole game, because you can't really just be like, okay, on Star stuff, you're going to do this, and on Predators, you're going to do that. It would be kind of a cluster, musically. But that did kind of set the template for me to kind of be a little bit more ready for handling, the playoffs all being done from Edmonton. And,
right.
I knew there was no chance that I was going to be flown up there to do that. They were going to use Edmonton and Toronto's DJs for those bubbles. But, I thought for the playoff run that DJ Johnny Infamous did an awesome job. He really obviously got a lot more of a crash course on how to, kind of work in more of the Star stuff, because he wound up working for their games,
Yeah. Oh man.
Like every single one, in addition to 7 other teams that were in the bubble on that side. And so he's working 2 or 3 games a day, before the elimination rounds. And in all that time, he was still checking in with me, and I was checking in with him on making sure they knew about the sing-alongs, but how to time.
Don't forget the sing-alongs.
They're
okay?
important.
Don't forget it.
Like, that's the main thing that people know that they but like timing out how the power play should sound with their PA guy, when to have that big hit from the Muse song hit with on the power play and all that. And he was able to work in more and more subtleties like that as it went along. And I enjoyed getting the kind of the notice and notoriety, whatever you want to call it, for working the games at Globe Life Park. But I kind of said all along, like, look, when I'm working, I'm only having to be one team for each game. If it's a Dodgers home game, I'm the Dodgers organist and DJ. If it's a Padres home game, I'm only the Padres, music. And, with Johnny Infamous and Kel Granton in Toronto, they're having to be the combination of both teams, because the NHL still wanted it somewhat neutral, favor the home team a little bit more. But, if the away team scored a goal, they still heard their goal song. And
that was weird.
Yeah. And
it was really weird.
It's a very Canada thing to do too.
Oh yeah, it is. They're so sorry.
But, sorry.
But it made sense for what it was and all that.
Yeah.
But, the amount of work that those guys had to do to make it all happen just blows my mind. And, I could not imagine. And they had to actually live in the bubble. I was able to go home every night.
Yeah.
And, if there was the first series I worked only went 3 out of the 5 games. So I had like 3 days off. And, could just be at home. I didn't go anywhere, but I could be in my own bed every night, and you know, just the it was just so crazy to do all that. But to talk about how the games at Globe Life Park were, every DJ and organist that I talked to of the four teams, the Dodgers, Padres, Braves, and Tampa Bay Rays, were also gracious. And I think part of it was because I've been on their side of things too. I
Yeah.
was like, look, I'm the Stars DJ. I could tell, the Dodgers organist who also works for the Kings and the Clippers, I believe. I could tell him, look, man, I know this sucks. I'm having to watch, another DJ play Pantera when my team scores a goal. But if you can give me these things, I believe I can make it sound as close to a Dodgers home game as it can without you being there. And I think that's the best thing for both of us is, for it to be clear that, look, I'm not replacing you guys, but this is the circumstance we're in. So
Yeah, let's work together.
we kind of, this is what we have to do.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Pantera because we had earlier mentioned about freshening up the library, keeping it fresh. I think that's one thing that, and I don't think I'd get a whole lot of arguments on this stance, but
Yep.
I think it's one thing that is a staple from now until into perpetuity, to quote the old gray wolf.
Yeah, is the
The
Dallas
Pantera-
Stars Cowboys from Hell
That's
rendition?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and that was something where when I interviewed, they asked about changing the goal song, and I kind of got the feeling when I told them that I didn't really, if we are going to change it, that changing it to Pantera was the best option. If they didn't like it, I'd be happy to try to find something else, but that's kind of what I came in with, and I got the feeling they were pretty much leaning that way too. Because they'd been playing Rock and Roll Part 2 by Gary Glitter for years, like even before, they came to Dallas, and, then all the stuff happened with Gary Glitter, and
Yes.
they moved away from it.
Surprising.
And so and they went to a couple different songs. I know one of them was The Whip by Loxley or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of had a similar feel and was also kind of like Chelsea Dagger, the Blackhawks goal song, just
Yeah.
that type of. But I think they were kind of ready to move into something that would last, and obviously that song Pantera has so much history with the team
In
with,
Dallas, and
Yep.
with Craig Ludwig, with the whole backstory that playing it when they come on the ice, and then also when they score. If people have to hear it 5 times in a night, that means we scored 4 goals.
Yeah,
if they
and
hear
I
it-
don't think any of us care.
No.
Because it's all
Yeah.
because all of it is so infused in the culture of the community that everybody is just in love with all of it. Man,
Yeah.
so your journey from free labor for Norm to now working for the Stars, you've done a World Series. Do you count the World Series as something that now you can kind of check off your bucket list, or does it only count for you if it's a Rangers
Good
World
question.
Series?
I think it's partial credit.
Okay.
I got a lot of that in school.
You get one gold star sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah, but getting to do an actual World Series with the Rangers at Globe Life Field and everything that goes along with it, that's when it'll be really real. Like this 2020 season, it was a blast. I had a great time, obviously working with Chuck and the whole crew, getting to really know everybody. And, thankfully doing a good enough job that I think it kind of helped solidify that, okay, I can hopefully work here for a little while. It still didn't feel real. Like, there's no fans, and, we're trying to create our own energy. Where do you get your energy? But it's just sorry.
No, you're
So
doing
you're
drops.
awesome. Yeah, this is perfect.
I'm still messed up in my mind from all
Where
the
do you
drops.
get your energy in this world?
God, me and my dad still laugh at that whenever
Yeah,
we
me too.
have questions or whatever, and just be like, "Where are you getting your energy?" It's just, God, I love the ticket, but
Yeah, me too.
it felt like a dream or something, a fantasy with this whole season where it's like, okay, hopefully for 2021, we'll have fans in the building from day one, even if it's 25% capacity, because one thing I do want to make sure I mention is that place is loud. Even when we only had the 25% capacity, about 11,000 people in the new ballpark, it was incredibly loud. Like after I think the second game that we had fans, in the NLCS, like we just stopped playing any sort of crowd noise. Like I'd pretty much stopped playing crowd reaction, but like we realized it was pointless to even have the little crowd murmur bed going. And if we can get a full house, just thinking about if we get to the World Series and have a packed house cheering and all that, like it might be louder than Reunion Arena was back when the Stars were making their Stanley
Whoa.
Cup run.
Yeah, when
Maybe
it
not-
when it was
I'll-
the Rowdies, man, the reunion
Yeah.
Rowdies.
I'll hedge it a little bit and say maybe not that loud because I know how loud that was. I don't want to offend Stars fans or anything like that, but just to make the point that the Rangers' new ballpark is very loud.
That's
and it's
that's gonna be
incredible.
fun.
So in 2014, Rich Peverly, were you there when that happened?
Yeah, so that
So-
was still my first season. Yeah.
So
that was
so
your
he-
first
so-
season.
So for anyone listening who doesn't know that reference, he famously
I was there
too.
Yeah.
I was there too. He died on the bench, which from my perspective, up in the very top seats, I think Jamie Benn or there was a bunch of the guys started grabbing stuff and throwing it, and I was like, "What the heck is going on?" What did you think in the sound booth?
Man, it was weird. Because if you know where I'm set up, I'm like down in the crowd essentially. I'm at the top of the first level, like to one of the sides of the goals. So I'm looking at the bench, and all of a sudden I see like 12 players, 12 Stars players jumping onto the ice and throwing stuff. I'm like, "Is a fight happening?" Like I
Just start cueing the fight song.
Yeah.
like I nearly played like whatever one of our fight songs was, and then I realized like, because I have Ralph and Razor, the broadcast in my headset, and all of a sudden, Ralphie's kind of figuring out like he's looking at the bench and figuring out Peverly's not there, and there's silence in the arena for 20-30 minutes, where we don't know if the game's going to go back on or what.
It was tense.
It was scary. Like that was a surreal night, where everybody's just kind of waiting around, like, word of course starts to filter in because people are able to listen or get on social media or whatever. But there was no one was making any noise. It was just deathly silent for 20-30 minutes, and then all of a sudden it's like, Jeff K pops on his mic, says,
I remember that very
the
well.
game is going to be suspended, or
Yep. I remember
please drive home safely.
my dad called me. We were sitting across from the Stars bench. My dad called me and was asking me what was going on. And I was like, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just stayed on the phone with each other until he found out what happened, and it was announced on the broadcast. And the people around us were just like, "Hey, do you know what's going on?" With no idea. Where I'm on the phone in silence with my dad, trying to hope that somebody lets us know what's happening.
And by the way, for anyone listening that doesn't know, it did end well that he was revived and then asked to come back and play, which
He
famously,
Yeah.
famously wanted to come back and finish the game.
Only a hockey player.
Yes.
Yeah. but thankfully he's doing great now. Like obviously, he didn't get to come back, and he retired after that. But like I run into him, most preseasons at the least, and occasionally during during the season, and he looks like he could still play. Like, he's pretty much looks like Ryan Gosling, and
poor
still,
guy. Don't you just feel sorry for dudes like that?
A little bit. but he's still got the hockey player like big old thighs. Like he looks like he could still play, but
he's keeping it tight, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really amazing that he recovered like he did, and that he just seems to be living a normal life now.
Dang, that's pretty awesome. What is your career that spans the last 18 years? If you can boil it down to your favorite moment, whether it's on the ticket, with the Stars, with the Texas Rangers in this World Series, what is your favorite moment from the last 18 years?
Probably coolest moment is pretty much every time I've gotten to hit the natural, the home run song whenever for the Rangers. The first one I believe was a Shin-Soo Choo shot to like pretty much the visitors bullpen, back at the old park, one of the games I was training on, and then the game that Chuck wound up announcing on Twitter after Rugi hit a home run. That was like a no-doubter, and I hit the music like way before it even landed, and that's when Chuck's like, all right.
That's awesome.
And so, the timing of that, and then Chuck sending the tweet before the game actually ended, like I think he almost missed a batter as he's typing out the tweet. But just as a Rangers fan, even at the new park when there haven't been any fans, getting to hit that song, it means so much to me. Just obviously it's such a epic sounding song, and Chuck's been using it since about 92 or 93, I think, when Jose Canseco came over. That's when he started playing it, and just getting goosebumps before every game, every Rangers game. Chuck will check in with the producer sitting next to me, confirm that he's ready to start reading the lineups and all that. But then right after that, he's like, all right, Grubes, let's go, or let's do it. Or, one of the, things the Rangers have tweeted and put on Facebook was like for Chuck's 3,000th game, where Chuck's like, all right, Grubes, for the 3,000th time, let's get this thing going. And then he immediately goes, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for, it's baseball time in Texas. And it's just like, the goosebumps, the, trying to be a professional and not cry.
Yeah,
not
that's
always
awesome.
Succeeding, but most of the time. It's been such a weird journey, but fun as, and at this point, I've just, I hope that I can do this for the rest of my working life, because I could never be, I'm just not meant for an office.
Yeah.
I thankfully am able to, work in the entertainment field, work in sports, and hopefully, people will keep liking what I'm doing for long enough that I can never have to look for a real job.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
man.
awesome. You're fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on.
Shoopy.
And,
we had Shoopy on the show.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that. Oh, hold on, I forgot the bit. Dang it! I was going to do a bit.
So we do a sign off that is very ticket inspired.
Yeah.
Where we would have you say, we would have you identify yourself. Tell me if you've ever heard this before. If you can identify yourself, state who you are, and say, this is why you should never listen to the Reverend and the Reprobate. And then we use that in our promos for the show.
All right. Hello. I am Michael Gruber. otherwise known as Grubes or Shoopy or Tweet Grubes. And I never listened to the Reverend and the Reprobate on the ticket.
That was a fun interview. And this is all that you guys are going to get as an afterglow because that went way too long. Reverend and the Reprobate. We talked to Grubes.
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Let me put my headphones back on.
That why are you putting your headphones on?
I don't know.
Like you can't. We don't have to hear.
It's just you and me.
It is. It's just us.
Yeah. Shoopy.
That was everything that I wanted it to be. I don't think that there was anything that we didn't cover that I really wanted to cover, and unless we were going to get in depth into ticket stuff, and it didn't feel like this was that moment.
I thought we might have to. I don't want to use the term drag.
Yeah.
Drag some of the ticket stories out, but he was like, let's talk ticket. I love the ticket,
and that's one of the things. He still loves it.
Yeah,
there's not some kind of weird animosity between him and the guys like there is with some of the other people that are in the past, and everybody there still loves and respects this guy. I mean, as far as making an exit and having a trajectory that allows you to keep your friendships, he's a shining example of it, and with his being the one bright spot on all of Twitter. And Ethan Nicole's up there, but
yeah,
he's no Grubes.
Yeah,
he's no Grubes.
Well, it was a super cool interview.
Yeah, Michael Gruber, Shoopy, we love you. Thanks for coming on. And for all the rest of you, thanks for watching the Reverend and the Reprobate. Make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. If there's somebody cool that you think we should interview that we haven't yet, let us know. And if we're able to get them on, you just might earn yourself an opportunity to come on and help us as a guest interviewer. We've done it a couple of times so far, and we're open to it again as long as you follow the rules.
What are the rules? Let's get into that.
The rules are there are no rules.
All
right, thanks guys. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.